All right, so today we're going to be working on complementary color value scales. So we are going to start by using our little worksheet, and on the left side of it, there is going to be all of our primary colors, and on the right side of it, there's going to be all of our secondary colors that are complementary to the primary color on the left. So we are going to start with our first row. So we're going to start by filling in our red, and we're going to do the red and green one. So we are going to start by filling in that whole square and making sure that the color is burnished, that it looks smooth, that it looks nice. We are going to build up layers. So think about going multiple directions. Think about filling in the square nicely, not going outside of the lines, and just making sure that it all looks smooth and nice and clean. Once we are done with the first square, what we're going to be doing is start working on our second rectangle. So we are going to start with a very light base of our primary color, so our red, and then we are going to start by using our complementary color of the red to darken that color a little bit. So we are going to grab our green, and I would use the dark green in our 12-pack Prismacolors, and we're going to keep this green very, very light as well. So as you can see, you can barely see the green as I'm putting it on my paper in that section. I'm going multiple different directions just to make sure that it's smooth and not streaky, and I will fill that whole rectangle area in as well. Once I'm done with the green, I am going to work my red back on top of it and start burnishing that color. So making sure that it's nice and smooth and that I cannot see the paper underneath. It looks almost shiny. And that is what we want to see for this section. So as you can see, the color, the red, has already started to change a little bit. It's looking darker. It's looking a little bit darker than the one we just did. So we are going to basically keep adding more and more green as we keep moving on in this value scale until we get to just the green. So for our third one, we still start with our red, still keeping the base very light, still trying to not make it streaky, filling in the whole square as we've done before. And then we are going to start by grabbing our green again, and we will try our best to make sure that we add a little bit more pressure than the area that we've covered before, so that our green is a little bit brighter in this square, and our square is going to, our rectangle, it's going to turn out darker than the one we previously did. So we add our green and then we cover it again, burnishing it with our red to create that smooth surface. And as you can see, I'm going different directions just to make sure that it's not streaky. So I'm grabbing my red, and then I will start filling this hole in as well to just make sure that it's smooth and nice and shiny. And you are going to see as we color this in that it's going to be looking darker than the one we just created. The next one is going to be basically the middle of our value scale. So we are going to basically try our best to put 50-50, 50% green, 50% red in this square. So we're trying to keep the same amount of pressure with both of those colors. So again, I'm starting with my red base, and then I'm going to go over it with the green, burnishing it again with the red to top it off. And as you can see with the green, I am going a little bit darker. I'm still putting more pressure than what I had before. I am filling it all in and making sure that I have the whole area covered, going multiple directions to not make it streaky, and filling that whole area in perfectly fine to then make sure that I am able to burnish it with red. So it is going to look even darker than what we just created. And as soon as we get done with this square, this area, we're basically going to just start the next side of the value scale, which is going to definitely have more green than red. The next thing I'm going to do is start from the last area, so the one closer to the word green. I'm going to just start by filling that whole area in with our green, making sure it's burnished and nice and smooth and shiny, and then I can move on to the last two rectangles. So the one next to the green one is going to be green with a little bit of red, and then we're going to put more red on our last one. So make sure that you do not go outside of the lines. Once again, make sure that it's burnished, that it's nice and smooth. I should not be seeing the paper through this area. So we are filling that one in and then moving on to the next one. So for this one, as you can see, we are going to start with a very light base of green. So we are just going to go both directions, making sure it's nice and smooth, fill that in with green. And then we are going to start by grabbing our red next and going very lightly on top of it all, making sure that it's looking nice and smooth. Once we're done with our light layer of red, we are going to move on to our green again and make sure we burnish that area with our green. So by filling this square in, you're going to be seeing that it's going to look a little bit darker than our clean, nice green. It's going to start looking like a value scales, and this is how we are going to darken our green most of the time. We're just not going to be adding black. We're just going to add a little bit of red at a time to make it go darker and darker and darker. So we are going to basically start layering colors, start building those colors. And these are the techniques that we're going to be using in our projects. And we are going to be learning how to blend them, how to create gradients like this with these techniques, and just overall darkening without using black. So last area, we are going to start again with a light layer of green, and this time we are going to use our red again, but putting a little bit more pressure than what we just did and a little bit less than our middle one. So we're going to fill that in nicely as well, making sure we don't make it look streaky, making sure it's blended, making sure that it looks smooth, that there's not an area that is more red than another. And I'm going multiple directions again just to make sure that it looks nice. Sometimes I also go in round motion. That also helps me keep things very smooth. And once we have that area in, we are going to grab our green again and fill that in again. So our green is going to be looking darker again. And we have basically created our value scale, and I'm seeing that my middle one is not looking as dark. Well, it's not looking at it has as much green as I wanted it to. So I'm just adding a little bit of green to that one as well. So just make sure that it looks like there is a smooth, clean transition between red and green. So I'm making sure everything's burnished, everything's nice, everything's smooth. And once I'm ready, I'm going to move on to the next row. So for our next row, we are going to be using our primary color yellow and our secondary color purple, which are complementary of each other. So as we previously did, we are going to start our first area, our first rectangle, by filling it all in with our primary color, so with our yellow. And here, just to make it a little bit faster on myself, I am going to start filling in my second area, my second rectangle, and my third one with a very light layer of yellow as well, just because I already know that I'm going to use those as a base to then start layering my purple on top of those. So just make sure that you create an even layer, keeping your pencil still very light, making sure you do not burnish it already. And we are going to just start by doing that, and then we're going to start adding our purple. And I'm just going to do it on my middle one as well, just super quickly, just since I already have my yellow in my hand. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to start grabbing my purple, and I will start putting a very, very light layer in our second rectangle. So as you can see, very light. You can barely see it on camera. I'm sorry, the yellow looks kind of sad. It's just the lighting early in the morning when filming this. So we are just going to fill that whole thing in, and then we are going to move on to our next one. So our next one, we are going to use, again, a little bit more pressure, and we are going to make sure that there is a little bit more purple than the one we just created. And then we're going to be working on our middle one. So applying a lot more pressure again, trying to keep it almost 50% yellow and purple. And once we're done with our purple, we are going to grab our yellow again, and we're going to start blending it all in nice and smoothly until we have burnished all of it. So as you can see, our yellow is starting to get darker. It's looking a little bit more muddy and brown, but this is just how we're gonna do it for now. And we are going to learn more techniques about this later. So make sure that it's burnished. Make sure you try your best not to make this look streaky. Make sure you fill in the whole area, and make sure you blend it in nicely. We are then going to move on to our next area. So we are going to start filling it in lightly with purple. And then we are going to be putting a little bit of yellow in this area. Well, a little lot. Yellow in this area, and then we're gonna top it with purple. So we are going to be basically sandwiching that yellow color with our purple. So I'm just moving on, getting all of my purple in so I can then just move a little bit quicker. And for the last one, I am going to make sure that I burnish this, that it looks nice, smooth, clean, and that I do not see the paper underneath. So make sure you fill that nice square in, and then we are going to be grabbing our yellow again, very light layer to the one next to the purple, and then push a little bit more in the one next to it. And then we are going to basically top it all with purple, as I was saying, making sure it's basically sandwiched up. And once we have all of that done as well, we are going to check it out and see if it's all blended nicely, if it looks like a nice value scale, a nice complementary color value scale, and if it just increasingly goes from yellow to purple. And as you can see, you can always refine it a little bit. So I think I didn't put enough yellow in this area, so I'm just adding a little bit just to make sure that it looks nice and smooth. And we're gonna quickly make sure we top off our last area with our purple. Once we're done with it all and we're happy with the results, we are going to start moving on our next value scale. So our next one, same process, but it's going to be blue and orange. So we are going to start by filling in our first area fully in blue, and then we are going to start going and making sure that we fill in the rest of it. So once we have the first one filled in, we're going to fill in the next two with a very light layer of our blue. And then we are going to start using our orange to darken those areas a little bit. So first one, we're going to use a little bit of orange, making sure that it covers the whole thing. And second one, we are going to put a little bit more pressure with our orange. And I am speeding them up just so we don't watch the whole video very slowly. I am going to then top both of those areas up with my blue. Same blue that I just used, but as you can see, it's going to start looking a little bit darker as we go. And I think for this value scale, it's going to be a little bit harder to see it on camera just because of how dark these colors are. But we are then going to keep moving on and doing our middle area with our blue and orange again. So as you know, start with blue, put a little bit of orange. Should be about 50% blue, 50% orange for this area. And we are going to top it all off with our blue again. Once I have that orange, we are going to just quickly start moving on to the next orange area. Start filling in those areas very lightly. So I'm filling in the 5th area and the 6th one. And just making sure that it looks nice, smooth, going both directions. So then I can just keep adding my blue on top of those to make that transition look smooth and nice. And our last one is going to be our burnished orange. So just the orange color as we previously did. So that's our last secondary color that we're going to fill in. And we should make it shiny. We should not see the paper again. Make sure you stay within the lines. Make sure it looks nice, smooth, and clean. So we have that orange filled in. We're going to grab our blue and make sure you grab the blue and not the purple. And we are going to top off our middle one super quickly, making sure that it looks darker than the one we created, so the third area. If we need to, we can add a little bit more orange as well. Then we are going to add some blue to the next area, making sure still that it's nice and smooth, and then we're going to basically top these off with our orange like we did previously. And then the one next to our orange hue, so our last one, it's going to be a very, very light layer of blue. The blue, it's very strong as a color, so make sure you keep your pressure very, very light as we do this last one. So once we have that blue, make sure you cover everything with our orange and make sure that it looks nice, smooth, burnished. Once again, burnishing is when we create that smooth, shiny surface by layering our pencils, by using a little bit more pressure. And we can always remember adjust that color if we see that the transition's not perfect. We can always add more blue, add more orange. We can always keep adding those colors to make sure that our transition looks smooth and nice. Once we're done and it looks like a nice smooth transition, we are going to just be done and have our little complementary color value scale in color pencils.